into the executive briefing part. So Lead with AI Pro, just for anyone not super familiar, the goal of doing this really is for you as an AI leader to have all of the insights that you need to advise your teams, to answer tough AI questions when you get them internally, which a lot of clients tell me about, right? You don't want to not be able to answer those questions, and to make obviously the right strategic decisions also around platforms and capabilities, especially because AI, as we will see today once again, keeps developing at breakneck speed. And the way that we do it is that our team of analysts are producing 3 weekly briefings that come to you via email on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. We do weekly tutorials. We do new on-demand lessons for all of the major platforms. We're now launching a full end-to-end training program for Gemini, as we will see today as well. There's so much happening on Gemini that I'm seeing some customers now thinking about moving to Gemini completely off of ChatGPT. And then obviously our wonderful community, where sometimes I wake up with 20 messages, sometimes with 100, but there's a lot of value there. I know it's hard to keep up, but there's a lot of value there. But we know that you're very busy. And so what we wanted to do really with this session today is to kind of distill down all of that research, all of those insights, all of the messaging in the community into a handy 15, 20 minutes summary. And I want to start with really the headline story of the month, which is these 3 major model updates. And you can see that there's a real arms race going on now when it comes to the major models. First, OpenAI launched ChatGPT 5.1 as their new default model. It's designed to be warm. I don't know if you're feeling it, but it's designed to be warmer, more intelligent. It's supposed to listen to you better, which obviously is always appreciated. And there's 2 key features. If you didn't discover them yet, there's 2 key features that are really stand out in the platform. The first one is dynamic thinking time. So basically the AI now by itself can decide where it should spend its kind of like time and energy processing power to get you the right result. So it's smarter about where it should slow down and where it should be faster. And the second part is the personalization. So they now added something that is expanded from a previous version called tone presets. And so now in your personalization menu, you can actually decide how strict or how sympathetic the AI should be when it's responding to you. So this will really determine what ChatGPT says and how it says it. I set mine to professional, and I really see a big improvement in the answers I'm getting back. So this will be worth exploring. But the competition definitely didn't sit still, because Anthropic also launched Claude 4.5. Now, for most of you, I think, besides the very advanced AI users like Henrik and Carlo I saw here just now, Claude is either unfamiliar or you only know it kind of like as a backend system for engineering teams. But it's good to see what they're doing in terms of models, because obviously this is putting competitive pressure on ChatGPT, especially as the market leader, but also because in their latest iteration of the model called Claude Opus 4.5, they really focused on agentic AI. So they really optimized it for agentic workflows. And this means that with this new model, you cannot just do like small, like 10, 15-minute little workflows with AI, but you can literally have an AI run like a multi-hour, multi-agent project, acting as the leader rather than just the supporter. The processing power of the model itself has also improved incredibly. And you may have seen Johannes Sundlo, the ex-HR at Spotify. He shared that with Claude, he used it for a presentation, and in one go, he got that presentation to about 97% ready, which is obviously a huge step up from what we normally get out of AI, kind of like as a pretty basic first draft. So you're really seeing that the power of these models is increasing a lot. But the biggest news this month was definitely Google Gemini 3 Pro, flagship multimodal reasoning model, really building on everything that Google has been doing so far. They reached #1. There's a famous AI leaderboard. They reached #1 in that leaderboard, really blowing away the competition like completely. Now, for companies, usually the performance of the model itself or the leaderboard is not really that important. It's really more about the capabilities that people experience in day-to-day work, and that's where it also shines. So we saw that, first of all, they launched with a massive context window of 1 million input tokens and 65K output tokens. If you've done the bootcamp, you know everything about tokens. And this means that basically the AI can reason over entire code bases or can actually have really consistent conversations with you over multiple days, even when you're uploading very heavy attachments. So the feel of working with this model should be very different even in your day-to-day work. And it's very deeply integrated into Google Workspace, which you'll see a little bit more on the flip side of this. And so therefore, as a result of especially these last two things happen, and especially this like big major Google model so well integrated into Workspace, 2 days ago, Wall Street Journal acquired a memo from OpenAI where Sam Altman has called Code Red. They're going to pull a lot of the resources that previously were on things like ChatGPT ads, like we needed that, health agents, Pulse, their new assistant. They're going to pull all the resources. They're going to put them back on the core model and really make sure that they stay in the lead. So you can really see that the platform wars are heating up. And I'll come back with a couple of more details on what Google is actually doing in terms of features. But I wanted to also highlight a bit of the research we've been seeing over the last month. There's always so much research coming out. We try to spend time to analyze the most important, but we can summarize that even further. Because basically what we're seeing, especially also working with clients, is that the technology is really only half of the equation, right? So even though the models become more and more powerful, the question still is like, how do we actually integrate it into our day-to-day work? And the first study we looked at was a study from McKinsey, extremely long paper. I didn't know McKinsey wrote papers that long, but anyway, they analyzed 7,000 skills that people have in typical jobs, not just knowledge work, but all the jobs out there, mostly focused on the US. And they basically found that AI, current AI, so what's currently already either out or demonstrated working in a lab, current AI can already automate 75% of all US work hours, which would unlock $2.9 trillion in economic value by 2030. Now, again, this is sort of like what's possible because at the same time, we're seeing that 40% of companies see measurable results, the other 60% not. And basically what McKinsey is saying in this paper, if you really look at the skills that people need, and I know, Slamit, we talked about that during the event as well. If you look at the skills that people need, we really need to shift from just our own personal collaboration skills to working with the AI or working with the agent. So McKinsey calls it a shift towards people, agent, robot partnerships, where there is still about a third of all the roles in the future that will be people-centric, but a really big part of role will actually be led by AI. And you're also seeing that, again, the challenge is not so much in the technology. The technology is already there, but it's really in how quickly organizations can pick up the transformation, especially in very complex and high-value workflows where we still very much rely on people. But if a company wants to move faster and want to be ahead of the crowds, that's really where they need to redesign processes, roles, skills, and metrics. And you can see here in the third bullet as well, is that some companies are getting there because the demand for AI fluency as a skill, whether that's non-technical or technical, grew 7x over the last 2 years. And now in 7 million JDs, it's already being listed as a requirement for a role. So we're starting to really see the shift of companies moving from kind of like mostly a human era to a more AI era, and agentic is playing a really big part of that. The second of 3 studies we looked at was from Stanford. This study is very interesting. I think, again, Slomit, Sophie, I know some others will be very interested in this because they basically analyzed how do humans do work and how do agents do work, or how does AI do work. And what they realize is that actually most of the time, if you implement AI as a replacement of a human workflow, the productivity actually drops. So we always hear about AI increasing productivity, but there are some, obviously, we've probably experienced some of that ourselves as well. There are now many examples where actually the productivity goes down, and this mostly comes from what they call low quality agent work. So this is actually where people are trying to put AI as a replacement of a human workflow, but agents have many deficiencies, which they hide really well. And if we're not aware of them, we will just take it, right? That's how we get work slop. That's how we get like bad work product from AI. But agents will fabricate data. So if they cannot read a file, for example, they will just make up numbers. They can misuse tools. So they will go do a web search and find more information because they couldn't extract it from the data that the human provided. And they make computational errors when they're shifting from the human kind of like UI based work to what machines actually can read. And in all of that, it basically forces then people to do extra work because now we have to fact check them. We have to make sure that the work is correct. And that's why the productivity actually drops rather than increases when you put AI into workflows. And of course, they're also showing, that's the second part of the bullet, AI does raise productivity, but it's only when you really understand that they call that workflow literacy, where you really understand both how does the work actually get done in organizations and what part of that should be automated, what part should be delegated to AI and what part not. And again, the way where they see the best, like the most strength is when you combine what is a human uniquely good at, what is an AI uniquely good at, and basically bounce the ball back and forth, as you see in the process chart here as well, which again, from experience is not something that most companies are thinking about and really is the way to unlock the value. And Gartner just released a framework, which we reported on last week, that brings all that together in a nice quadrant, which I like as an ex-consultant. They also put a specific date on it. So they said by 28, 29, we will have job chaos. There's going to be so much redesign necessary on the jobs that we know today in order to get to where we will be in the future with these AI capabilities continuously building. They're saying 32 million jobs are going to have to change annually, either rework them, fuse them together, or rewrite them in terms of what people do. And they look at like two kind of like dimensions on how work will change. One is basically on agency. So who is in the driver's seat? Is it the human or is it the AI? And the other one is on the outcome. Are we optimizing the work we're already doing today? Or are we actually reinventing the work? And that basically leaves us with these like four kind of like key dimensions. I'll go from top left. So top left is basically where you can call it like the exception handler. So most of the work is done by AI. It's the same work that we do today, but most of it is done by AI, and the humans are basically checking, right? So it's mostly AI work, same work. Humans are checking the work that the AI cannot do. On the bottom there, on the left-hand side, you still have the work is still the same, but people are using AI as a support. So you still have like a lot of people working supported by AI, and that's pretty much where most of us are playing right now. But really what they're saying is that we should really be on the right-hand side where we're not just doing the same work we're doing today with AI, but we're transforming the work completely. And that's where you would have, if it's mostly AI-led, you would have, this idea of the one person unicorn, right? The one person billion-dollar company, this idea of it's mostly AI doing the work with the humans supporting here or there, or it's a company where mostly the human is leading the work, but very much supported with AI, but in roles that have been completely rethought for what's possible. And they said even for companies that are trying to be in that top right quadrant, where they're trying to be AI first, they said their finding is actually that you have to be remarkably human first to even be able to support an AI first organization, which I thought was quite interesting. And I think this is really something that like every leadership or every COE should really look at this model and say, what kind of company do we even want to be? And how do we then build towards that? We have two great resources in terms of like, okay, that's great. In theory, how do we actually get there? So we have two great resources on the member side. Last week, we did a great session with Debbie Lovek, senior partner from BCG out of Boston, on how do we actually redesign work and how do we build an organization that's even ready for transformation towards that right side of that quadrant. And spoiler alert, it's on the slide. It's mostly around building an employee-centered organization built on trust and psychological safety. And almost on the flip side of that, the next morning, our time, we did a session with Rob Baker, the HBR published author of Personalization at Work. And he really focused on how can we work with people to understand AI and then completely recraft, as he says, their role. And that is basically the process we have to take people through. So if you're in those kind of change functions, both of those sessions, they're on the member side. I found them deeply valuable. I'm applying a lot of the lessons already. So that's definitely worth looking into. There's also one more technical component to this, which we don't really talk about that much in this group, but I think it's really critical. There's a study that just came out from Superintelligence AI agency, and they basically showed why organizations are struggling so much to make the jump to agentic AI and to really skilled AI. And it's not just on the human side. They found that the two top constraints were basically number one, data fragmentation, and number two, a lack of documented workflows, where they said almost 50% of companies are not documenting how work gets done. So again, looping that back to the Stanford study, how can AI replace something if the information is living either in siloed data sources or worse, in people's heads, right? You cannot tap into AI. So basically, they said 2026 has to become the year of context, right? So providing clean data that is universally accessible for AI and documented workflows. So I didn't want to end this with just all this stuff that we have to do. Let's also use a nice case study. So we reported on this one last week. ServiceNow, their CHRO, Jackie Kenny, had a great discussion with Josh Bersin in which they basically shared how they approached an AI transformation in a company of 28,000 people. And these AI companies, right, because ServiceNow is now predominantly an AI and agent company, they obviously have to kind of like dog food, right? They have to do the work themselves. So she shared how they mapped, before they looked at any tools, they really started by mapping out AI readiness for all 28,000 roles. And then they organized the growth that they needed to get to in four key pillars. So the pillars are number one, working with AI every day. Number two, building with AI. Number three, selling AI confidently to customers. And number four, helping managers lead boldly through change. Right. So it's not, again, it's not just the learning AI part. It's also really the how do I now work towards that and how do I sell that to others? And the detail that I thought was really amazing from this is that they even had their board of directors take this assessment and share that publicly to really signal this is not just a workforce issue, right? This is really something that's coming from the top down and we're all in the same boat together. And then based on that readiness, they crowdsourced 1,000 ideas for AI implementations. They then narrowed that down to 27 high impact projects. And one of them was actually in her people operations team, and they were able to double their output. So to go from one HR covering 400 people to one HR covering 850 people, including an effort to automate 90% of routine questions. Now, I know this is also the service that ServiceNow sells, but still very remarkable and very interesting. And again, the whole focus was on then opening up the time for HR to spend where it matters. If you're keen to learn more about how AI can play a role in HR, we have a great webinar coming up with Johannes Sandlo, who I mentioned before, on the 16th of December, where we will go into a lot more detail. But as promised, we will also come back to just a couple of cool tools and features that, you know, it doesn't all have to be hard work on big transformations, right? That we can use immediately. First of all, if you haven't tried it yet, the amazing, first of all, the name is amazing, but the amazing Nano Banana Pro. This is the new image generator created by Google. It's built on Gemini 3 Pro that we talked about before. And that allows it to create images in 4K, so a higher resolution than any image generator has been able to do before, fully text accurate and fact grounded. So what it basically can do, as you see here on the screen, is that it can create these like fully professional images that are indistinguishable from real ones with fully accurate text and even full on infographics, diagrams, maps, and system visuals, all from a single prompt. Joe Harris shared this prompt in the community where you put this prompt into Gemini and it will generate a visual like this in real time based on the current weather today in your city. So that's a very fun one to check out, and I will send it in the follow-up email so you have the prompt if you didn't find it in the community. And if it would be great if everyone can do it so that we have a collection of all of the cities that are represented in the community. And then this one about the infographic. So again, it can create a full infographic from just a text prompt. So this example is from the AI leader at Logitech, Eric Porras, who gave a prompt about his entire career and then said, illustrate it as if it's one of those fast sketches at a conference. So everything you're seeing here, like the reasoning on how to structure the data, how to sequence it, how to illustrate it, and then the final generation all came from just one prompt to Nano Banana, which you can just use natively if you just go to gemini.google.com. And this prompt is also in the community. And again, what a different level of AI than anything that we've seen before. Also from Google, Notebook LM has two amazing new features. The first one you're seeing here on the screen is a new slide deck feature. So basically, you can now take any of the sources that you feed to your notebook, hit on slides, and it will just generate an end-to-end slideshow for you that is like a full presentation that you can give. And I saw a couple of great examples already in the chat group. It now also supports sheets, docs, PDFs, images, and URLs as the sources. And they just embedded deep research into NotebookLM. So you now have that dedicated research agent, which can plan a research plan, scan hundreds of websites, also all of your documents on Google, if you have it on Google Drive, and then return a full report. And we have a tutorial for both using deep research on NotebookLM and a tutorial for creating presentations and infographics with NotebookLM. They're both on the member site, and these are very simple 5-step tutorials, so you can just quickly try out how to actually get these done. And then the final one I wanted to highlight is Google, who also launched a new platform called Flows. So, okay, all of the before was really cool and really impressive. This is really going to move the needle, and I'm really hoping, because it looks a bit like Zapier or Make or Copilot Studio, I really hope they get inspired by what Google just launched, because it's basically a fully automated workflow where you can connect live data to an agentic workflow from all of your Google apps. And anyone who has created a GPT or a gem before can now launch an agentic workflow, which is still very difficult on most of the other platforms. And so if you're on Google, this is absolutely like no-brainer. You got to go dive into this. I created a sales agent. So basically 10 minutes before any meeting I have on my calendar, there's a standard instruction that Gemini goes off on the web and researches the person and the company that I have the meeting with. And then based on the services that we provide suggestions on which value items I should lead with. All of that fully automated, set it up one time, forget it, and it just does the work. And for that one, there's also a detailed tutorial on the member site. So if you go to member.leadwithai.co, you have a list there. Click on in 5 steps tutorials, and then there's a full tutorial also for Google Flows. And this is really something to just play with if you've already done the other kind of like basic steps or if GPTs and gems to really get the benefit from AI. So it's a lot of, again, a lot of work, a lot of research, a lot of analysis, a lot of tutorial and lesson building that we do on a monthly basis. And so I thought, like, let's just bring it together again in this sort of like quick 20-minute briefing. And I would kind of leave you with a couple of questions to really think about, are we getting the most out of AI based on some of the stuff that we just saw? So I think like probably one of the biggest ones is really thinking about whether the company that you're in or like the company that you lead, whether you're redesigning your processes effectively towards that, again, that right side of the quadrant, and to truly unlock the value that AI can provide, or if you're kind of just like bringing software into existing workflows. The second one, to that McKinsey study, are we really equipping our leaders, our managers to lead hybrid people, agent, robot teams, right? So are they really being set up and trained to lead teams where both people and agents are working, right? That org chart is going to look crazy, but that is where we're moving, right? So that's really where you want to be ahead of things. And is there actually the workflow literacy, right, from that Stanford study to unlock the value without running into the issues where basically people are actually slowed down because we're trying to automate things that AI is not good at, right? Do we understand how the work gets done and where AI has a natural place? The fourth one is really around the culture of learning. So Debbie's session goes deeply into that, right? Are we doing it from the top? Is AI fluency really something for all of us and not just for the people executing the work? And then do we give people space and time for experimentation? We've seen time and time again, this is crucial for unlocking anything. We saw it again in the ServiceNow case study. If we don't give people space and time, they cannot create anything. And then how do we go from, again, thousands of case studies into these high impact use cases, right? So how do we actually then prioritize and find those, in their case, 27 cases that are actually being then built out into company-wide tools? The super intelligence study really reminds us that we have to think about the data. Is the data that we have accessible for AI? Is it in silos, or worse, is it in people's heads, right? Is the data accessible? Are we going to start getting people involved in agentic? We all know, thanks to Gary, how difficult that transition could be. But again, a platform like Google Flows makes it really easy. Deep research in NotebookLM makes it really easy, but only if we teach people those skills, if we teach people those tools. And to that point, right, think about that AI tech stack that you have, right? Are you actually giving people the tools that allow them to be way more valuable and way more productive and enjoy much more the work that they do, including some of these tools like NotebookLM, who are actually available for free, right? But if we block everything, we're also really blocking ourselves from tapping into all that AI can deliver. So I'll let you mull over those questions. I know I'm going to come back with a more practical question, which was your AI win, but just some questions to leave you with as we go through a month's worth of research. But for now, we're going to go from AI to something way more human.